You've been told your whole life that hard work is the secret to success. Wake up early, stay late, grind harder than everyone else. The message is simple. If you're not rich yet, you just haven't worked hard enough. But let's be honest. If that were true, the hardest working people on earth would be billionaires, and we both know they're not. Somewhere along the line, hard work went from being noble advice to a quiet trap. It became the story that keeps people busy, tired, and broke, while the ones who understand the game work less, earn more, and seem to live on a different planet entirely. This book isn't about working harder, it's about working clearer. It's about understanding why effort alone no longer equals success, and what actually does. Because the truth is simple. If all it took was hard work, your parents would have been millionaires. So if you've been grinding, hustling, pushing, and still feel like you're running in circles, this book is for you. It's not going to flatter you, it's going to free you. Chapter 1. The Lie We Were Raised On. Let's start with a confession. I used to believe in hard work, like religiously. I treated it like a moral code. Work hard, stay humble, be patient, and one day the universe would hand me a golden ticket to success. That's what I was taught. Probably what you were taught too. And hey, it sounds fair. You put in the effort, you get the reward. Simple, predictable. Except it's also completely false. Hard work doesn't make you rich. It just makes you tired. Now before you roll your eyes, no, I'm not saying you can sit around doing nothing. You still have to work. But the idea that more effort equals more success? That's a lie that's kept millions of people running on the same treadmill for decades. You know what the world actually rewards? Clarity, timing, leverage, and yes, a bit of luck. But luck usually finds people who were smart enough to stop wasting all their energy on busy work. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who works incredibly hard but somehow never seems to get ahead? Maybe it's that relative who's been doing 12-hour shifts for 20 years. Or your friend who's juggling 3 side hustles, always saying, one day this will pay off. They're exhausted, they're proud of their grind, but financially they're stuck in the same place. Why? Because the world doesn't pay you for effort, it pays you for impact. And the two are not the same thing. Here's a funny thing about effort. It feels righteous. It gives you a sense of control. You think, at least I'm doing something. But sometimes doing something is the best way to avoid doing the right thing. See, we were all raised on a simple equation. Work hard, get rewarded. But that equation only worked in a world that no longer exists. Back in our grandparents' time, the system was simple. Work in a factory, climb the ladder, stay loyal, get a pension, retire. The path was linear, and effort was measurable. But now, the ladder's gone. It's been replaced by an algorithm. The rules changed, but we're still playing the same game, wondering why we keep losing. It's like showing up to a Formula 1 race with a horse. You can be the best rider in the world, but it doesn't matter if the game has changed to engines. That's the modern world. We're trying to work harder in a system that rewards leverage, not labor. You don't get paid by the hour anymore. You get paid by the impact your hour creates. That's why someone can post a video online and make more in a week than someone else does in a year. It's not fair, but it's real. Now, when I say this to people, they often get defensive. They'll say things like, "Are you saying I shouldn't work hard?" No. I'm saying stop worshiping it. Hard work is good, but only if you're applying it to the right vehicle. Imagine rowing a boat in the wrong direction. You can row faster, harder, longer, but you'll just get to the wrong place sooner. That's what most people are doing, enthusiastically rowing in circles. Let me tell you about a guy I met years ago. We'll call him Tom. Tom ran a small coffee shop. He worked non-stop, opened the shop at 5 a.m., closed at 8 p.m., did inventory, cleaned tables, handled everything himself. His friends called him the hardest working man in town, and they were right, he was. The problem, after 3 years of that grind, he wasn't making any more money than when he started. One day, over coffee, ironically, I asked him, "Tom, why don't you hire a part-time manager or automate some things?" He laughed and said, "I can't afford to." And that right there, that sentence, is the anthem of the broke, because what he really meant was, I can't afford to stop being the engine. He didn't realize that his hard work had become a trap, a cage disguised as dedication. Tom didn't own a business. He was the business. And that's the trap most people fall into. They don't build systems, they build prisons. The system told you that hard work equals progress, but it forgot to mention that progress depends on direction. Working hard in the wrong direction doesn't make you successful, it just makes you sore. Think about it. The richest people in the world aren't the ones working the longest hours. They're the ones whose ideas, systems, and teams work for them. Jeff Bezos isn't packing Amazon boxes. Elon Musk isn't personally tightening bolts on Teslas. They built leverage, people, processes, platforms that multiply effort without multiplying hours. Meanwhile, the average person still thinks the secret is to just grind harder. That's like thinking the way to win at chess is to move your pieces faster. It's not about speed, it's about strategy, and yet we glorify grind culture. We wear exhaustion like a trophy. People brag about not sleeping, as if fatigue is a flex. You'll hear someone say, "I only got 4 hours of sleep last night." And someone else goes, "Oh yeah? I haven't slept since Tuesday." Congratulations, you've both lost. Because tired doesn't equal successful. It just equals tired. The funny thing is, the people who actually win rarely talk about how hard they work. They talk about what they're building, who they're empowering, and what they're automating. Hard work might make you reliable, but leverage makes you rich. That's the lie we were raised on. We were told to be good workers, not good thinkers. We were taught to grind, not to grow. And it's not your fault. That story was designed to make you useful, not wealthy. If everyone became strategic, who would keep the system running? That's why schools teach you how to follow instructions, not how to question the entire system. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The system needs hard workers. It just doesn't reward them. It rewards the people who create, work for others to do. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You realize that hard work alone was never the path to freedom. It was the path to dependence. That's why the subtitle of this book could have easily been, "Stop Rowing Harder, Build a Motor," because that's what leverage is, a motor for your effort. Chapter 2, The Cult of Busyness. You ever notice how everyone these days is busy? Ask someone how they're doing. "Oh man, crazy busy." It's become the new way of saying I exist. We used to say I'm fine, now we say I'm busy. Because somewhere along the line, we decided that being constantly occupied meant we were doing something important. Busyness became a status symbol. It's proof, or at least pretend proof, that we're valuable. It tells people, look, I matter. I've got things to do, places to be, people to email. And here's the irony. Half of those emails are probably about how busy everyone else is. We've built a culture where rest feels guilty and stillness feels suspicious. If you're not stressed, you must not be serious. You can see it everywhere. The guy who answers calls during dinner like he's saving the world. The woman juggling 10 tabs on her laptop, sipping cold coffee because she's just too busy to reheat it. We even glorify burnout now, like it's a merit badge. But let me tell you a secret. Busyness isn't success, it's camouflage. Most people stay busy so they don't have to face how unproductive they actually are. It's the perfect modern drug. Free, socially acceptable, and highly addictive. Think about it. Busyness makes you feel useful. It gives you a hit of dopamine. You check things off your to-do list, you feel accomplished. Even if those things didn't move you 1 inch closer to your goals. You spent 8 hours working, but deep down you know you didn't actually build anything. It's like cleaning your desk before starting real work. You feel productive, but you're just stalling. Let me tell you a story. Years ago I had an employee named Mark. Brilliant guy, detail-oriented, the kind of person who always looked like he was in the middle of something critical. If you walked by his desk, you'd see papers spread out, spreadsheets open, phone pressed to his ear. Busy, always busy. One day I decided to track what Mark actually got done in a week. I didn't tell him, just quietly measured outcomes, not activity. Guess what? He was completing less than half of what another guy, let's call him Jake, was doing. The difference? Jake wasn't busy, he was focused. Jake worked fewer hours, took his breaks, and somehow always hit his targets. Mark? Constant motion, minimal results. So I asked him one day, "Mark, what's keeping you so busy?" And he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I'm just trying to stay on top of everything." That was the problem. He was staying on top instead of moving forward. That's what busyness does. It tricks you into mistaking maintenance for momentum. We confuse activity with progress, motion with meaning. It's like being on a treadmill. You're sweating, you're panting, you're moving, but you're not going anywhere. And the scary part? We actually admire people who live like that. We praise them for their grind. We post motivational quotes about hustling harder. We give awards for Employee of the Month, usually to the most exhausted person in the building. Meanwhile, the guy who quietly works smarter and finishes early gets side-eye like he's slacking off. We've created a society that rewards visible effort more than actual effectiveness. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of people stay busy because if they ever stopped, they'd have to confront how little their work really matters. When you're constantly moving, you don't have time to question your direction. And that's exactly how most companies and frankly most systems want it. Because a busy worker doesn't have time to think about leverage, ownership, or freedom. They're too tired to think about anything. It's genius, in a dark way. Keep people so preoccupied they can't imagine alternatives. And you know what? It's not just jobs. Entrepreneurs do it too. I used to wear busyness like armor when I started my first company. I thought being constantly on the phone, answering emails at midnight, and working weekends made me the real deal. It didn't. It just made me an unpaid intern in my own business. I wasn't leading, I was managing chaos. Then one day during lunch I looked at my calendar. It was full, meetings, calls, tasks, and I thought, wait, when exactly am I supposed to think? That's when I realized, busy doesn't mean important, it means unavailable to better ideas. I started cutting meetings, started saying no more often, started delegating. Guess what happened? My income went up, my stress went down. And for the first time in years, I actually had time to see the big picture. Here's something people rarely talk about. The richest people in the world have the most free time. They're not running around checking emails every 10 minutes. They're thinking, planning, positioning. Because real wealth isn't built in the noise, it's built in the quiet. Now, I'm not saying you should do nothing. I'm saying do less, but better. There's a famous quote, I think it was from Tim Ferriss, that says being busy is a form of laziness. Lazy thinking, lazy prioritization. That hit me hard when I first heard it, because it's true. Busyness is what happens when you don't know what actually matters. If everything's urgent, nothing is. And the world loves to keep you in that loop, always reacting, never creating. Emails, notifications, endless to-do lists, all designed to make you feel important, while you quietly burn out. So, how do you escape it? First, you stop bragging about being busy. Stop treating exhaustion like achievement. You're not a hero because you slept 4 hours. You're just running on fumes. Second, you start measuring output, not activity. Ask yourself, what did I actually build today? What moved the needle? And third, you make time for nothing. Yes, nothing. Sit still, think, reflect. Because clarity only shows up when the noise goes down. You'll be shocked how many of your urgent tasks magically solve themselves when you give them space. When you stop being busy, you start being effective. And that's the real secret. The people who look the most relaxed often did the hardest thing of all. They stop mistaking motion for meaning. They realize the goal isn't to do more, it's to need less doing. And when you reach that point, when your worth isn't tied to your workload, that's when you finally step off the treadmill. You stop being busy, you start being free. Chapter 3, The Loyalty Trap. Let's talk about loyalty, that sacred word every company loves to use but never quite lives up to. We've been raised to believe loyalty is a virtue. Be loyal to your job, loyal to your boss, loyal to the company that gave you a chance. And if you stick around long enough, your loyalty will pay off, right? Promotions, raises, stability, a gold watch at retirement. Sounds heartwarming, except it's mostly fiction. Here's the truth. Loyalty is often just a polite word for stagnation. And before you get defensive, I get it. Loyalty feels good. It feels noble. It makes you feel like you're doing the right thing. But in today's economy, blind loyalty can quietly be the most expensive decision you ever make. Because the modern workplace isn't a family, it's a transaction. You give your time, energy, and creativity in exchange for money and maybe benefits. And that's fine, as long as you remember that's all it is. But the system doesn't want you to remember that. It wants you emotionally attached. It wants you to bleed company colors, to talk about our mission, to believe that your job is part of your identity. Because the more loyal you are, the easier you are to manage. The moment you start saying things like we instead of they, even though your name isn't on the ownership papers, congratulations, you've been emotionally outsourced. Now don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should be cynical or disloyal. I'm saying you should be strategic. Loyalty is a beautiful thing when it's mutual. But if the company would replace you in 2 weeks without blinking, you might want to stop pretending it's a marriage. Here's a simple test. If your loyalty doesn't come with equity, it's probably costing you money. Let me tell you about someone I knew. We'll call her Lisa. Lisa worked for a mid-sized marketing firm, brilliant at her job. She started as an intern, worked her way up, and after 8 years, she basically ran the department. Her boss loved her. Always said things like, "Lisa, you're the backbone of this place." He told her she had a bright future there, that her loyalty would pay off. So Lisa stayed, and stayed, and stayed. Then one day, the company merged with a bigger firm, and suddenly Lisa's bright future became a redundant position. She was replaced by someone half her age and half her salary. 8 years of loyalty, and all she got was a "we're restructuring" email. When she called me to vent, she said, "I can't believe they did this after everything I gave them." And I said something that probably sounded harsh at the time. You gave them loyalty. They gave you a paycheck. The deal was done the moment you stopped asking if it was still worth it. It's not that Lisa did anything wrong. She just didn't realize that in modern work, loyalty without leverage is servitude. And this is where most people get trapped. They trade potential for certainty. They'd rather have a predictable paycheck than unpredictable growth. They tell themselves they're being responsible, when really, they're being comfortable. Comfort feels safe, but it's a slow financial poison. Because that certainty you think you have, that job, that salary, that safety net, it's an illusion. If your income can disappear because someone else made a decision, that's not security, that's dependency. And dependency is the opposite of wealth. Wealth isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much control you have over your time, energy, and options. The truly wealthy don't chase certainty, they build systems that give them freedom. Now here's the twist. Corporations know this. They understand human psychology better than most people do. They use words like family and team because those words trigger emotion. No one wants to disappoint their family. No one wants to let the team down. So you work harder, you stay late, you take on more, you become dependable. And in exchange, they give you a coffee mug and a pat on the back. Meanwhile, the shareholders, the ones you've never met, are the ones who actually got richer because of your loyalty. It's not evil, it's just the game. And you can't win a game you don't know you're playing. The irony is the people who are least loyal, the ones who jump jobs, take risks, start side businesses, often end up in a better position long term. Why? Because they treat their skills like assets, not chains. They're loyal to their own growth, not to someone else's company. And that's the mindset shift that separates the broke from the free. Let's be clear. I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow or tell your boss to shove it. I'm saying stop confusing stability with security. Stability feels good because it's predictable. But predictability without progress is just a prettier form of stuck. If you want real freedom, you have to be loyal to opportunity, not to comfort. Think of your career like investing. You don't put all your money in one stock forever. You diversify, you take calculated risks, you adapt to the market. So why do people treat their jobs like long-term relationships with bad returns? If your job isn't growing your wealth, your network, or your skill set, you're not being loyal, you're being lazy. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of hard workers. Because the truth is, loyalty feels like work. It feels like discipline. It feels right. But if it's not leading to ownership, it's just another treadmill. You can spend your life climbing the corporate ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong building. I remember a mentor once told me, never be more loyal to a company than it is to you. At the time, I thought it sounded harsh. Now it just sounds accurate. Because when layoffs happen, loyalty doesn't protect you, numbers do. Performance metrics do. Profit margins do. And that's when people realize, too late, that loyalty was never a shield, it was bait. So what's the alternative? Be loyal to your future self. Every decision you make, every hour you give, should serve the person you're becoming, not just the person signing your paycheck. That means learning skills that translate outside your job. Building networks that outlive your company. And yes, taking small risks that open big doors. It means seeing your job as a bridge, not a destination. Loyalty keeps you broke when it keeps you still. But loyalty to growth, that's the kind that pays forever. So if you've been taught to just keep your head down and wait your turn, it's time to look up. The line you're standing in doesn't lead where you think it does. And the people who get ahead, they're not waiting in line, they're building their own door. Chapter 4. The Effort Delusion. Let's play a little thought experiment. Imagine two people. Person A wakes up at 5 a.m., grinds until midnight, answers every email, double-checks every task, and never takes a day off. Person B wakes up at 9, works 4 focused hours, and spends the rest of the day reading, thinking, and building systems. Who's working harder? Obviously, person A. Who's going to win long term? Almost always person B, and that's what drives hard workers crazy. Because we were raised to believe the world is fair, that if you put in more effort, you get more results. But that's not how wealth works. That's not even how reality works. The truth is, effort and outcomes stopped being proportional a long time ago. You can put in 10 times more effort and still get the same, or even less, result than someone who worked smarter. That's what I call the effort delusion. Now don't misunderstand me. Effort is necessary, but beyond a certain point, effort without leverage is just glorified struggle. Let me explain it this way. If you're pushing a car by yourself, you can double your effort, triple your effort, even collapse from effort. But if the car's in neutral on flat ground, someone with a truck can move it faster without breaking a sweat. That truck is leverage. Leverage multiplies effort. It turns 1 hour of your work into 10 hours of output. It's the difference between labor and leadership. And yet so many people stay stuck in the mindset that harder is always better. They say, I'm going to grind 10 times harder this year. Great. But if you're grinding the wrong wheel, all you're doing is creating more dust. Here's the crazy thing about leverage. It's available to everyone, but most people ignore it because it doesn't feel like work. It feels too easy, too abstract, too unfair. Because our brains are wired to associate struggle with worth. If something doesn't hurt, it doesn't feel valuable. So we keep choosing pain over progress. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I ran a small marketing agency. At first, I did everything myself, writing copy, designing websites, managing clients, doing sales calls, you name it. I was the human version of a Swiss Army knife. And sure, business was okay, but it felt like every dollar came with a drop of sweat. Then one day, a mentor said something that stuck with me. He said, "You're not in business, you're just self-employed." At first, I laughed. But he was right. I hadn't built a business. I'd built a job, with extra paperwork. So I started building systems, templates, automated emails, standard packages. I hired one assistant to handle client communication. And something wild happened. My income doubled. My workload dropped by 60%. It felt almost wrong at first, like I was cheating. How could I be making more while doing less? Because that's what leverage does. Effort creates income. Leverage creates freedom. Now let's talk about the math behind this, because it's not magic, it's mechanics. If you work 10 hours a day and get paid hourly, you're capped. Your income can never exceed the number of hours you can sell. But when you apply leverage, through tools, people, media, or money, your hours start working for you. One video can reach 1 million people. One product can be sold 1,000 times. One idea can be executed by 10 other people while you sleep. That's why 10 times effort not equal to 10 times results. But 10 times leverage often does. Think about it. You can't outwork a factory or a codebase or a distribution network. You can't physically grind harder than technology. But you can design systems that work while you rest. The average person spends their life trading time for money. The wealthy spend their life building things that trade value for money. The worker says, "How much will you pay me for this hour?" The entrepreneur says, "How can I make this hour pay me forever?" That's the real difference. Let me tell you a funny story that proved this to me. I once met two guys at a networking event, both photographers. One was exhausted juggling clients, editing photos late into the night, barely keeping up. The other seemed relaxed, even bored. When I asked what he did differently, he smiled and said, "Oh, I don't do client work anymore. I sell photography presets online." He had built digital tools for other photographers, filters, templates, tutorials, and now thousands of people bought them every month. He wasn't working harder. He was working leveraged. One was trading hours. The other was trading systems. Guess which one was making 5 times more money while traveling full-time? This is the essence of the effort delusion. We think effort equals worth when really it's the multiplier that counts. You can shovel dirt with your hands or use a bulldozer. The bulldozer doesn't work harder, it just works smarter. The goal isn't to hustle harder, it's to design a life where your hustle compounds. Now here's where most people mess this up. They think smart work means laziness. It's not. Smart work is strategic work. Hard work asks, how can I do more? Smart work asks, how can I get more from what I already do? Hard work adds. Smart work multiplies. And when you start thinking in multipliers, everything changes. You stop chasing hours and start chasing impact per hour. That's what the wealthiest people measure, not how busy they are, but how leveraged their effort is. And here's the best part. You don't need millions of dollars or a huge team to start building leverage. If you create content that works while you sleep, that's leverage. If you build an online course once and sell it 100 times, that's leverage. If you invest in tools, automation, or even relationships that multiply your results, that's leverage. The key is to stop asking, how can I work harder? And start asking, how can this work without me? Because wealth isn't about how much you can do. It's about how little you have to do, while everything you've built keeps working. The effort delusion tells you that more work equals more results, but the truth is more leverage equals more life. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll look around and realize, most people are sprinting in place. They're putting in maximum effort for minimum return. While the ones who seem lucky just found better leverage points. The difference between struggle and success isn't intensity, it's leverage. So before you decide to work harder, make sure you're not just doubling down on a dead-end system. Because no matter how strong you are, you can't outlift a lever. Chapter 5. The False God of Discipline. You've probably heard it 1,000 times, all you need is discipline. Every self-help book, every motivational speaker, every rise and grind influencer loves that word. Discipline. It sounds so powerful, doesn't it? like a secret code for success. Be more disciplined. Stay consistent. Wake up earlier. But here's a thought you won't hear often. Discipline alone can ruin your life. Yes, you heard me right. Discipline without direction is just expensive suffering. Think about it. If you're disciplined at doing the wrong thing, all you're doing is accelerating failure. If you're climbing the wrong mountain, it doesn't matter how strong your legs are. The world is full of disciplined people going nowhere fast. They're committed, structured, and consistent at being stuck. They've mistaken endurance for progress. I used to be one of them. I had my routines, my alarms, my planner. I was the poster child of productivity. But here's the thing. I was running in the wrong direction, just more efficiently. You don't need more discipline. You need better direction. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine, let's call him David, is one of the most disciplined people I've ever met. He wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every day. He journals, meditates, works out, reads, eats clean, never misses a beat. It's impressive, almost robotic. But here's the problem. He's been in the same job, same income, same position for the past 7 years. I asked him once, "You've got all this discipline. Why aren't you moving forward?" He looked confused and said, "Because I haven't found the right opportunity yet." That's when it hit me. He wasn't short on opportunity. He was short on clarity. Discipline without clarity is like running a marathon without knowing where the finish line is. It's admirable, but it's also pointless. The world doesn't reward effort. It rewards alignment. When your actions line up with the right direction, even small steps compound. When they don't, no amount of discipline can save you. Let's be honest. Most people don't need more motivation or discipline. They need to stop doing useless things consistently. Because being consistently wrong doesn't make you right. We glorify consistency like it's the ultimate virtue. Just be consistent, people say. But consistent at what exactly? If your aim is off, consistency just ensures you miss the target every time. Focus beats consistency every day of the week. Focus is about choosing the right one thing to give your energy to. Consistency is about doing that thing regularly. But if you're not focused first, consistency just becomes a ritual of mediocrity. Here's a simple mental model that changed everything for me. Imagine your life as a funnel. Discipline is the size of the water flow, how much effort you pour in. Focus is the size of the opening, where that effort actually goes. If the funnel's opening is narrow and misaligned, you can pour all the water in the world and still not fill the bucket. That's how most people live. They keep pouring and pouring and pouring, and then wonder why the bucket never fills. They think they need more discipline, when what they really need is a better funnel. Let's take an example from business. I once consulted for 2 sales teams at different companies. Both had talented people. The first team worked harder, long hours, endless calls, constant hustle. The second team worked less but had a sharper system. They focused only on high-quality leads and used automation for follow-up. Guess which team made more sales? The second one, by a mile. Not because they were more disciplined, because they were more focused. The first team was disciplined chaos. The second team was strategic efficiency. Focus creates leverage. Discipline just sustains it. But discipline without focus, that's just a hamster wheel. I remember a quote from Naval Ravikant. He said, "In a long enough timeline, you don't need to be disciplined, you need to be obsessed." And that's the key difference between people who succeed big and people who just stay consistent. The best performers in any field aren't motivated by discipline. They're driven by clarity and obsession. They know exactly what matters, and they pour themselves into it. Not because they're forcing themselves, but because it makes sense. When you're clear on your goal, discipline becomes natural. You don't need alarms or motivational quotes. You just do it. You don't need to fight yourself into action when you're aligned with what matters. Clarity creates energy. Discipline tries to control it. Now, let's talk about mental models, simple ways to think about smarter output. One of my favorites is the 80-20th rule, Pareto's principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. If you focus your discipline on the right 20%, you can outperform people who grind 100% of the time. So, every week, I ask myself, what's the 20% that's moving the needle? Then I double down on that and cut the rest. Another mental model, energy allocation. You only have a few high-energy hours each day. The trick is not to fill them with random activity, but with the most valuable work possible. Discipline says work all day. Focus says work smart when I'm sharp. And finally, the one decision rule. Make one hard decision that eliminates 50 small ones. For example, instead of deciding daily what to work on, decide once. These are my top 3 priorities this quarter. That's focus, that's direction. Discipline is forcing yourself to show up every day. Focus is knowing exactly why you're showing up. You see the difference? The gym bro who works out without a plan doesn't build a better body just because he's disciplined. The person who understands nutrition, recovery, and smart training will beat him every time. even if they work out less. Because the goal isn't to push harder, it's to push smarter. The irony is that once you master focus, you actually need less discipline, because your energy isn't scattered anymore. You stop fighting yourself, you stop wasting effort, you start compounding results, and suddenly life gets easier, not because the work disappears, but because it finally matters. So next time someone tells you to just be disciplined, remember this: discipline is a tool, not a religion. It's only as useful as the direction it's pointed in. Stop worshiping discipline. Start mastering clarity, because clarity doesn't need constant motivation. It pulls you forward, and when that happens, you stop waking up to fight through your day. You wake up excited to build something that matters. That's not discipline, that's alignment. Chapter 6. Building systems, not sweat. If I had to summarize real wealth in one sentence, it would be this: wealthy people build systems. Everyone else just builds to-do lists. Because here's the truth: human effort doesn't scale. You can't outwork time, you can't clone yourself. At some point, your muscles, your brain, and your willpower tap out. But systems don't get tired. They don't need coffee, motivation, or pep talks. They just run, day and night, rain or shine. The moment you realize that your job as an entrepreneur isn't to do the work, but to build the machine that does the work, your entire worldview changes. See, most people are addicted to effort because it feels productive. We love the feeling of doing, checking boxes, crossing things off. We equate activity with achievement. But the problem is, you can't scale activity. If your business relies on you showing up every single day, congratulations, you've built a job. If your business runs whether or not you show up, congratulations, you've built a system. And systems are where real wealth lives. Now let's make this real. When I started out, I was a control freak. I didn't trust anyone to do things as well as I could. So I did everything myself. I was the CEO, marketer, designer, accountant, and janitor all at once. It was impressive and incredibly dumb. I thought I was being productive, but I was just being busy. Then one day, a mentor told me something that hit like a slap. You think you're a perfectionist, but really, you're just scared to let go. He was right. My need to do everything myself was just a lack of trust in people, in systems, in process. That's when I started studying what wealthy people actually do. And I noticed something strange. They didn't look busy. They looked calm, not because they didn't work, but because they built systems that worked for them. They didn't get paid for their labor. They got paid for their leverage. Let's talk about what that means. There are three kinds of leverage in the modern world: people, automation, and assets. First, people. Delegation is one of the hardest things for any entrepreneur, but also one of the most liberating. Delegation is not about dumping your problems on someone else. It's about transferring ownership of outcomes. When I finally hired my first assistant, I realized something wild. I wasn't just saving time, I was saving mental bandwidth. Every time you delegate a task, you're not just removing work from your schedule, you're removing stress from your mind. That mental space is what allows you to think strategically. Now, automation, that's the second lever. Automation is what allows a single person to do the work of 10. It's not about being lazy, it's about being efficient. If you can automate a task once and never touch it again, that's compounding efficiency. Every system you automate pays you back in time, the one currency you can't earn back any other way. For example, instead of manually emailing every new lead, set up an automated welcome sequence. Instead of following up with every client, create a system that does it for you. The goal is simple. If you have to do something more than twice, systematize it, because the more you repeat, the less you grow. Now, the third form of leverage, assets. An asset is anything that works while you don't. It could be a product, a video, a book, an investment, or even a brand. The key word is compounding. Assets compound. Labor doesn't. When you build an asset, something that continues to produce value without your constant effort, you start buying back your freedom. Think of a YouTube video that keeps earning views years after you made it, or a course that continues to sell, or a rental property that keeps paying you every month. That's an asset. That's leverage in motion. Every wealthy person I know focuses on building assets and systems, not adding hours. Meanwhile, the middle class keeps adding more effort, thinking that's the way up. It's like trying to win a Formula One race on a bicycle. No matter how fast you pedal, the car is going to win, because it's built for speed. So the real question is, are you building the engine, or just pedaling harder? Here's a simple framework I live by now. Document, delegate, automate, optimize. If you do something once, do it. If you do it twice, document it. If you do it 3 times, delegate it or automate it. Then optimize it over time. That's how you turn work into a system, one piece at a time. You see, every time you create a process, you're building a mini employee that doesn't sleep. That's how small businesses turn into empires. Not through hustle, but through compounding systems. Let me tell you a quick story. A friend of mine owned a bakery. Great guy, amazing pastries, but he was drowning. He worked 16-hour days, doing everything himself, baking, managing, serving, even handling social media. I asked him, why don't you hire people? He said, because no one can do it like I do. Sound familiar? That mindset kept him small for years. Eventually, he burned out and was ready to sell the business. I convinced him to give it one last try by building systems. He started by documenting every single step of his day. Then he trained one person to handle morning prep. Then another to manage the counter. Within 6 months, he was working half the hours, and his revenue had doubled. A year later, he wasn't even in the bakery most days. He was running 2 locations. He didn't bake more. He built systems that baked for him. That's leverage. And the funny thing, his pastries didn't get worse. They actually got better, because now the process was consistent. That's the beauty of systems. They remove human error and emotional chaos. When you rely only on effort, your results fluctuate with your mood, energy, and willpower. When you rely on systems, your results are stable and scalable. Here's another mental model. Systemize before you scale. If you scale without systems, you multiply chaos. But if you systemize first, you multiply profit. Think of it like baking. If your recipe isn't right, making more cakes won't fix it. You'll just burn more flour faster. So before you expand, stabilize. Before you grow, streamline. That's how real business owners operate. Now, there's a subtle mindset shift here that changes everything. You have to stop asking, how can I do this? And start asking, how can this be done without me? That's how you move from operator to owner. Because every successful entrepreneur eventually realizes the truth. The goal of business isn't freedom from work, it's freedom through systems. Once you get that, your focus shifts completely. You stop measuring success by how busy you are, and start measuring it by how smoothly things run without you. You stop chasing hustle and start designing flow. And when your systems start running on their own, you'll experience something wild, peace. That quiet confidence that comes from knowing your work is working, even when you're not. That's not luck. That's leverage. So, if you want to escape the work hard, stay broke cycle, remember this. Don't build a harder life. Build a smarter system. Because sweat dries. Systems scale. Chapter 7. The Freedom Equation. There's a point in every ambitious person's life where they stop asking, how can I make more money? And start asking, how can I make more freedom? That's the moment things really start to change. Because for most people, the game starts wrong. We're taught that success equals hard work equals income, and income equals happiness. Sounds reasonable, until you live it. You start working harder, maybe you even make more money, but life doesn't feel freer, it feels tighter. Your schedule fills up, your stress goes up, your time disappears, and before you know it, you're just a higher paid version of who you were before. The truth is, wealth isn't about money, it's about control. Control of your time, control of your choices, control of your direction. Money without control isn't wealth, it's just a fancy leash. And that's where the freedom equation comes in. It goes like this. Freedom, wealth, income. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep. Freedom is how much of your life you actually own. You can have a 7-figure income and 0 freedom. You can also have a modest income and near total freedom. I've met both kinds of people. Guess which one looks happier? Here's the funny thing. The people who chase income end up exhausted. The people who chase freedom end up wealthy. Because freedom forces you to think differently. It forces you to build systems, to delegate, to invest, to create leverage. Freedom-minded people ask, how can I earn without being trapped by what I earn? That's the real question of financial intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong, money matters. But it's not the finish line, it's the foundation. If money were the ultimate goal, then every millionaire who burned out, divorced, or crashed would still be successful. But we know better. Success without freedom isn't success. It's sophisticated slavery. When I was younger, I thought freedom came after money. I thought, let me work myself to the bone for 10 years, then I'll finally relax. You've probably heard that one before, the mythical someday. But here's what really happens. If you build your life on the habit of overworking, that habit doesn't magically stop when the money shows up. You don't earn freedom by accident. You build it deliberately. Freedom doesn't come after success. Freedom is success. Let me tell you a quick story. A while back, I met 2 entrepreneurs at a business retreat. One ran a $20 million company with 80 employees. The other ran a $2 million company with a tiny team and a lot of automation. Guess which one was constantly on their phone, stressed out, managing crises? The first guy. And guess which one spent half the year traveling doing work he loved with 0 meetings? The second guy. It hit me that day. The first man had wealth. The second had freedom. And in the long run, freedom wins every time. Because wealth without time is just gold-plated stress. So how do you get there? How do you move from worker to builder, from income to independence? It starts with redefining what success means for you. Most people never question the default version of success. They inherit it: more money, bigger house, nicer car. But if you dig deeper, what you actually want isn't the house, it's the feeling that house represents: security, comfort, pride. Once you understand that, you realize you don't need to follow someone else's formula. You can design your own. That's what builders do. Workers trade time for money. Builders design machines that create time and money. Workers ask, how can I earn more? Builders ask, how can I make my time worth more? The difference sounds small, but it's everything. Let's talk about how to make that shift. First, stop measuring your life in income. Start measuring it in autonomy. Ask yourself, how many of my daily actions are my choice, not my obligation? How many hours of my day are mine? How many decisions can I make without asking for permission? The more of those you can answer with all of them, the freer you are, regardless of income. Second, build your life around optional work. Optional work is the holy grail. It's the kind of work you want to do, not because you have to, but because it's meaningful. The wealthy don't stop working because they're lazy. They stop working on things that drain them and focus on things that expand them. The moment you can say, I choose this, instead of I have to do this, your relationship with money changes completely. Third, and this is the big one, design systems for freedom, not control. A lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of building businesses that depend entirely on them. They think they're buying freedom but end up building a cage, one that looks impressive from the outside. If your business can't survive a 2-week vacation without you, you don't own a business. You own a job with branding. True builders think differently. They build things that run without them. They hire people smarter than themselves. They automate, document, and simplify relentlessly. Because freedom doesn't come from doing everything right. It comes from doing the right things once and letting systems handle the rest. Now here's the beautiful irony. When you chase freedom, money tends to follow. When you design systems, when you delegate, when you stop micromanaging and start multiplying, your time opens up. You start seeing opportunities that weren't visible before. You stop running on adrenaline and start operating with clarity. That's when creativity comes back. That's when new ideas, real wealth ideas, start to appear. Because wealth grows in stillness, not stress. Freedom creates that stillness. The people who are too busy to think rarely build anything that lasts. Builders, on the other hand, make space to think. They value space more than status. That's why I always say, workers fill their calendar, builders guard their calendar. One measures success by how many things they do, the other measures it by how few things they must do. You can tell a lot about a person by how they use their free time. Some fill it with distraction. Builders fill it with design, designing systems, designing life. So let's bring it back to the equation. Freedom, wealth, income. Money is a tool. Wealth is the outcome of using that tool wisely. Freedom is the experience of owning your time. The goal isn't to be the richest person in the room. It's to be the most free. That's when you stop surviving on effort and start thriving on design. That's when you stop grinding for weekends and start living for purpose. And the best part? Freedom compounds faster than money. The more freedom you create, the more clearly you can think. The more clearly you think, the smarter decisions you make. The smarter your decisions, the faster you grow. That's the real freedom equation. Clarity compounds into wealth, and wealth compounds into time. So if you're still grinding away thinking freedom is someday, remember this. Freedom isn't something you earn at the end. It's something you build in the process. And the sooner you make that shift, from worker to builder, from income to autonomy, the sooner life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like yours. So in conclusion, stop working hard. Start working clear. If you've made it this far, let's take a breath together. You've been grinding, learning, reflecting, and maybe questioning some beliefs you've carried for years. That's good. That's the beginning of clarity. Because the truth is, this book was never about working less. It was about seeing more. Seeing how effort, when misplaced, becomes a trap. Seeing how discipline can turn into punishment without direction. Seeing how loyalty to the wrong things can quietly chain you to a life that's too small for your potential. We've been told since childhood that hard work is the path to success. And yes, hard work matters. It builds character, resilience, grit. But at some point, you have to ask the harder question. Hard work toward what? Because if all your energy is pointed at the wrong target, the only thing hard work guarantees is exhaustion. That's the truth nobody tells you when you're young. That working hard and working clear are not the same thing. Working hard is effort. Working clear is direction. And direction, my friend, always wins. We live in a world that glorifies motion, busyness, hustle, 24/7 productivity. But the modern economy doesn't reward motion. It rewards impact. And impact comes from clarity. Clarity creates leverage. Leverage creates freedom. And freedom, that quiet control over your time and choices, that's what real wealth feels like. If you remember only one thing from this entire audiobook, let it be this. Clarity is the new hustle. You don't need to do more. You need to do less of the wrong things. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer distractions. You don't need to find more time. You need to stop wasting the time you already have. That's what working clear really means. It's not about slowing down, it's about aiming better. See, wealth in the modern world isn't created by those who work the hardest. It's created by those who design systems, spot leverage, and align their actions with what actually compounds. The old rules said, get a good job, be loyal, work hard, retire happy. The new rules say, build skills, build systems, buy time, live free. And somewhere between those two sets of rules lies the choice that defines your entire life. You can be the person who works hard, always grinding, always chasing, always tired. Or you can be the person who works clear, calm, intentional, and free. It's not about luck. It's not about shortcuts. It's about vision. The moment you stop asking, how can I do more, and start asking, what actually matters most, your world shifts. You start building, not just working. You start owning, not just earning. You start living by design, not by default. I've seen it happen over and over in entrepreneurs, creators, even employees who finally realized their time was their most valuable asset. The moment they started treating clarity as currency, everything changed. Their businesses grew faster, their stress dropped, their lives expanded. Because the truth is, freedom and focus are the same thing. You can't have one without the other. So as we close this book, I want you to picture something. Picture yourself 1 year from now, same person, but operating clear. You're no longer chasing everything that moves. You've identified the few things that truly matter. You've built systems that work while you rest. You've stopped glorifying exhaustion and started respecting energy. And suddenly, you have time. Time to think, to live, to create. That's wealth. That's success. That's peace. You finally stopped measuring your value by how tired you are at the end of the day, and started measuring it by how free you feel when you wake up. So here's the final truth of this book. The line I hope echoes in your mind long after it ends. Don't just work hard. Work clear. Hard work builds survival. Clear work builds freedom. And if you have the courage to slow down long enough to think clearly, truly, honestly, you'll realize something powerful. You were never meant to stay broke. You were meant to build something that sets you free. The world doesn't need more tired, overworked, disciplined people. It needs more clear, creative, and conscious builders. So go build, not just a business, not just income. Build clarity, build leverage, build freedom. Because when you work clear, you stop chasing life and start leading it.